Good evening, everybody. Christian, would you be ready to go? Okay, I will do a brief introduction, and we'll get started right away with the shop tour. Hardwick founder Ridge Shin was inspired by timber framing in the 1970s while working at Old Sturbridge Village, and followed his newfound passion and career founding a company and helping co-found the guild along the way. The company passed to a new generation in 2015 when Christian, who had joined Hardwick only a couple of years before in 2014, agreed to take on the running of the company. He's never looked back. Join us to explore thank you for joining us now to explore Hardwick shop and learn more about the story of the company. And I think most of you probably know Christian is a member of the company members committee and a great supporter of the peer-to-peer network, and he's running for the board. So without further ado, Christian, we'll leave it in your capable hands.
Capable is a stretch, but here we go anyways. Thank you for the introduction, Mac. This is Talkin shop in a very poorly lit office as I look at my screen, so apologies for that. For those who don't know me, I landed in this position through no real skill of my own. I don't want to take credit for getting into the company. That was just happenstance and good luck. And ended up, I started here on the bench in 2014, August of 2014. I was put on the bench to learn about timber framing. That was the start of my exposure. My background in mechanical engineering, specifically working in fluids, actually. So really nothing to do at all with structural timber framing in the slightest. And just wanted to do something with my hands, and was lucky enough to be able to start cutting joinery at a bench at Hardwick Post Beam. What I wasn't aware of is, at the time, the gentleman running the company, who was Newell, Ridge Shin's son, was eager to get out of the family business and spread his wings in a different direction, and looked at me as a beautiful little escape pod, which I didn't know at the time. So in 2015, early 2015, I got back from a job site, and he said, "Hey, let's go take a quick walk." That's how we would have conversations, on a walk, because our shop didn't have any privacy, still doesn't. So our personal meeting space with employees for a one-on-one is just walking down the road. And he asked if I wanted to take his position as CEO of the company. And at the time, I think I was 25, so I didn't know any better to say no. So I said yes. And that's when it really just got fun. And with zero sales, management, business, marketing, timber framing experience, I started to run Hardwick Post Beam. And I took the helm fully in August of 2015 with the support of Ridge. He was still staying on in the business in whatever capacity I asked of him. I didn't know enough on when I should ask him things, so that was a bit tricky. But I would say I unsuccessfully ran the company for a good 3 years until I really almost ran it into the ground. I was close. I did my best. But luckily I had some really, and still do, some really great employees that were able to kind of warn me and sound the alarms and help me pull the rudder of that downward running plane just before we hit the bottom, pull it up, and have had a pretty great rise to whatever we'll call success. It's definitely been a heck of a lot better in the past few years in regards to really every aspect of the business. So it's been just nice to go on that ride and feel like I'm actually at cruising speed and not actually destroying the business, but we're now working on making it awesome. So that's been feeling really good. And I've learned a lot on the way, which is great, and not at too much detriment to ourselves. So that's a little background. I don't know how long-winded that was. So I'm going to switch to my cell phone now, which is still working. That's pretty cool. So let's see how this little transition goes. Oh my gosh, there's a new screen and it's terrible. Can people still hear me? With an awful reverb. Let me fix that. Is that better? Yeah. Nods. I see a thumb. That's good enough. All right. So the shop tour, I guess that's really what this is about. Not me babbling on. We have an 80 by 80 facility that we've been in for about 20 years. It's a pole building that Ridge built back when he was also doing pole buildings. Luckily, we don't do that anymore. It's broken up into about a 60 by 80 shop with a few broken up sections on the remaining 20 by 80 portion. It's pretty straightforward and pretty beat up, but it's sitting on about 2 acres. So we have some space outside that I can't really show you because it's dark out. But enough room to bring in a truck, store some lumber, and be useful to us. So I don't know if I can flip the camera. Fantastic. So this is basically our office. It's 15 feet wide from that wall to this wall. It's where we have our client meetings, design meetings, staff meetings. It's the only office space we have. This is our conference room, which has a table that really does not reflect the quality of work we do. It's actually quite embarrassing. We're working on that. We have a cluttering of samples and examples of material, a fun little piece of reclaim structure to prove to a client that we could do it, and we got that job. We have a slew of photos that help to talk with the clients and help express what we do. A space of computers for our design work, our full residential design, as well as for all of our shop drawings. This little closet of a unorganized bomb that I consider my office. It's terrifying. And just if I am getting way too off track, someone yell at me. I can't see your faces, so I can't judge reactions. This is so Ridge, the previous owner. This is technically his office. He still works out of here in certain periods of time for his beef business. We don't try to clean this because it's futile. So we just have a little kitchenette, some storage, time clock, and we just try to really keep the door closed. Then a little sample space. So I have strong goals to rework this whole office space to be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. I actually had a meeting with a client, and they were kind enough to tell me that they went with us despite our office being woefully unimpressive. So that kind of motivates me a little bit more to have it reflect what we do here. But once again, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. So onwards and upwards. This is our shop. It is, as I said, a 60 by 80 building, 14-foot ceilings, a big open space. And I think we operate a bit differently than some folks. We're a full hand cut operation, which I wouldn't say is uncommon, but we operate in a way where we have 6 stations on 3 on each side of the room. So each of my 6 timber framers has their bench, fixed to the wall
where they can organize the shop supplied power tools. They each have their set of sawhorses that lives in front of the bench. And during the course of a frame, we have our forklift. They load the timbers onto their sawhorses. And they all do the layout, the cutting, and the checking. And so instead of everyone doing the layout for everything all at once and then everyone cutting, people just go at their own pace. Seems to work for us so far. So we have a board of plans that shows the project at hand and shows the trouble I've gotten my crew into that our friend Ben Broomgraber tries to get us out of. Really, that's how we operate. I get us into trouble and I find people to get us out of it. We have a sign out sheet which lists all the timbers, still handwritten because my foreman hates the concept of Excel. I'm working on that. And each of the timber framers will go to the pile of uncut timbers, pull out a set of sticks. Maybe it's 4 simple sticks. Maybe it's a pair of scarfs, 2 bigger sticks, whatever it may be. They sign those out and put their initials on them. So when someone signs it out, they initial it. Maybe in this case it was Kurt, and he will lay out the timbers on his bench as the plan dictates. Once he's done that, he will find someone to check those timbers to make sure he laid them out properly. That gets another signature on the board. Once the timber is signed twice, Kurt can go ahead and cut it. And once he's done fabricating it, a third person will check it to make sure it was laid out proper still and cut proper. And then we get a third signature. So we make sure we have 3 people check each timber before we consider it done, put it on the finished pile, await for the full fabrication of the frame, and then we start pre-fitting the major components. So that's what happens in this little magical room. It's never big enough. So all the guys will supply most of their layout hand tools. We supply all the power tools necessary. We also supply all the safety equipment in order to encourage proper use of safety equipment. It's a pretty warm space once it gets going. We heat our shop with scraps from all the projects. We have an outdoor wood boiler that we fire up, fill it up, and it heats the slab. So it's actually a pretty nice space to be working in the winter. On certain days, I even find that during the winter, if this slab's been going for a while, the doors are open a little bit to get some air in here. And it still stays pretty warm because of that thermal mass. The ceiling, conventional trusses, and heated or insulated with just blown in foam up there. You know, really it's a functional shop, but woefully unimpressive considering what this whole industry builds. In back, we have a little bit of extra space that is truly unorganized, that hides a little forklift, some stationary tools, and just supplies. We don't use too much of the stationary tools in here, but it helps us just to keep some of the supplies out of the way of the real work happening in the shop. To our left, this is our break area, 9:30 and 3 o'clock. Guys get to come hang out, sit down. Hopefully the Woods' stove is going in the winter. Today we had some wild mushrooms for lunch that one of our guys brought in and cooked up on this, and those were freaking delicious. I think they were hen of the woods. There's some doors back here, so we can open it up and cross through. The intent was to be able to drive a tractor trailer in here. I don't think that's happened many times, certainly not in the past 5 years. But behind this is an even worse built shed that I am just hoping falls down soon so it can be replaced with something useful. But until that happens, we can't open that up with any usefulness. I think that's basically most of it. and I think probably a really great time to maybe stop for questions. How does that sound to folks? And maybe I'm going to go back into my office and sit down here and see faces and reactions and stuff.
Christian, we don't have any on the chat at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, folks, don't forget to unmute if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, and really that's my whole shop right there. As I saw Ben just put on the chat, the building was very poorly built in the sense that it's a pole frame with conventional trusses and a metal roof ceiling. And on top of the metal roof, there's plastic underneath, above the metal and below the wooden trusses, and then a bunch of blown in foam. And the roof that wasn't maintained super well for a while and leaked. And that just turns into a swimming pool that loves to rot trusses. So Ben helped Ridge, who still owns the building, come up with a nice solution to keep the roof from falling down on us. So yes, Ben, it's better. Still a few leaks I need to hound Ridge on, but it's a heck of a lot better. All right. I like the 3-person checking system. Thank you. Me too. It doesn't find all the errors, and that's frustrating sometimes because you think it should, but it's better than no checks. What tools are shops supplied? Oh my gosh, I love questions. This is great. All of our power tools, if it plugs in or if it uses a battery, we supply it. Sometimes I'll buy a chisel for people when I'm feeling generous. But for the most part, they have their chisels, squares, tape measures, builder's squares, things like that. We'll supply consumables, blades, pencils, all that. And that's some people bring their own tools. And regardless if they're using our tools or their tools, we will cover repairs and consumables. And once again, very much I cover the safety equipment. I'm all for buying whatever safety equipment is going to get used. It doesn't do any good sitting on the shelf. And if there's a better option that will actually make him use it, I'll go buy it. It's worth the money. How many dogs still support the shop? 2. The white one in the picture was my dog. She's no longer with us. We have a golden doodle, I think it is, Louie, who hangs out in the truck most of the day, but will come by for break time. And then we have Little Dog, which is a little dog that sits in the office, usually on my lap, and keeps us all safe. And look at that. All the questions. You guys are champs. We're in Hardwick, Mass, which it's a lovely spot. And I'm going to hold that thought and answer this one real quick. We don't use Muffel mortisers. We use Makita. I would really like to get my hands on a Muffel and do a very quantitative time test to see just how much quicker a Muffel is and get a numerical answer to it that translates to dollars to see how quickly it would take to pay off the tool that costs at least 3 times as much. It's one thing if you have one, but when I have to get 6 of them, I need to know that, if that pays off in 4 months, game on. If it's going to take 10 years, all right, let's think about it a bit more. So we don't have the mortisers, but we do have the Muffel bandsaw, which is just a dreamy tool. We have mainly Makita saws, 7 1/4 through 16-inch with the 8 1/4 skill saw worm drive. We have the 2 kinds of Makita 10-inch saws, the one you get from Timberwolf Tools, which is nice, but clogs up, I find. And then we also have a half the price Makita 10 1/4 that you can get just online that I kind of like better. And for the 16-inch, we have the skill saw worm drive 16, basically the Bigfoot, and the Makita both great tools. My foreman really likes the Bigfoot quite a bit, and I have a huge Craigslist problem, and if it's timber frame related and a good price, I will go buy it.
Christian, only because you're so open and probably such a good judge of your own performance. What were the biggest mistakes you made starting up?
How much longer do we have?
Big mistakes, the big ones.
Big mistakes. The biggest mistake I made has been not asking for help and not trusting. And that's what drove my foreman away. We had a great foreman, and he quit because I was micromanaging everything and not listening the way I should. And spoiler alert, that pisses people off. And then my designer quit, and then I had two other really great guys that basically said, hey, we're a foot out the door. And it was around that time that I realized, wow, I suck at this. And I had a serious come to Jesus conversation with those guys. I talked to those two and said, and really laid it all out there. They said, yep, we'll stay on. Let's work towards a better working environment. It was great. I eventually, we got my designer to come back, and that's been a much better relationship. I got my old foreman, rehired him, much better relationship. So I basically just about ruined most relationships and then rebuilt them. And I'd say that is the single biggest mistake I made in the beginning of this. To answer your question, Mac. All right, back to the other questions. Barb Colkins, who designs your structures and what is your favorite structural style? Well, we have an in-house designer that designs all of our, any project that we get that needs design work, we can tackle with our in-house designer. But we also love working with outside designers and architects when a client brings that to us. My favorite structural style, still standing is my favorite structural style. And I do my best to get it as far as I can until I beg for Ben's help. And he's always ever so gracious, regardless if it's short sentences or not. But realistically, I thrive on just new and different projects. I wouldn't make it here if I had to do the same thing every day. That's why I like my job, is because it's constantly changing. And if I get someone asking for a salt box, of course we'll do it. But when I get someone asking for something really wonky, my eyes light up. It's yeah, let's figure this out, because it's just interesting. So that's really where I get excited. It's not one style specifically, but it's a constant barrage of new styles and new things. Will, we have 8 people in the business. 6 people in the shop, 1 foreman, 5 timber framers. They're the ones who fabricate the frames, pack the frames, and then go put them up. And sometimes they're nice enough to let me go on site with them. Then I have 1 designer and myself, and we have an off-site bookkeeper that that isn't an employee but works for us to help keep our books in order. I'd love to get to a point where it's about 10 timber framers, a designer, project manager, and a office manager. But we're not quite there yet. Maybe in the future. To add to Mac's question, the biggest mistakes I've made, those are fun to talk about. The second biggest mistake I made was just was trusting too much with my bookkeeper. I started here and we had a bookkeeper that's been with us for years, and she retired. But when she was here, I didn't really need to look at our bank accounts, look at our credit card, because she would just feed me whatever information I needed. I really trusted her just to handle all of that, which was nice and extremely poor practice. And so it wasn't until $14,000 plus later that I realized when our new bookkeeper was stealing from us. And so my complete lack of financial oversight and really having my fingers in that cost us a lot of money. Insurance was able to help out a little bit, but I don't have an in-office bookkeeper anymore. And I religiously check all of our finances, honestly, daily, just to make sure things are in order. All right, how has COVID affected us? Man, that's been an interesting ride through and through. So when things started to hit the fan, we furloughed 3 of our framers. My designer started working from home full time, and I started working from home full time. So that left 3 guys in the shop, and 3 guys in the shop that I continued to offer furlough to. And they're actually the 3 older guys of our crew. The 3 young ones furloughed. The 3 older guys said, nah, we want to keep working. And because we had a big open door and 60 by 80 worth of space for them to socially distance, and I spent a bunch of money on tools to make sure no one was swapping tools, we were able to kind of keep working at that limping pace pretty safely. And then as time went on and Massachusetts started to reopen a little bit, we brought the other 3 guys back, updated safety procedures to include masks and hand washing and sanitizing, both on site and in the shop, because we hadn't gone on site for about a month and a half during COVID. We just pushed that all off until it got a little bit more ironed out. But now, each guy has about a 20 by 20 space that they can hang out inside. They have their own tools. They can hand wash. Big doors are open. So we think it's a pretty safe space to be working, but we'll see what the winter brings us. That should be an interesting time. I just don't know what's going to happen. I just hope it's not too difficult. So for our current shop staff, my designer's been with us just about as long as I've been here, about 6 years, I think. My foreman has been here for about 14 years collective. Actually, let me go start with the longest. And I got to use names to keep track. Ray's been with us for about 35 years. The company started in his chicken coop in Hardwick, and he still works here. He's 65, going on 66, still working. Then we have my foreman, who's been with us for about 14 years. Another employee who's going on about 8. 2 that have been here for 5, and 1 who was here for 2 years, left and is back, and he came back this year. The way I look at our where we work is, I say we work nationally, we advertise locally. So I don't put much effort into getting jobs outside of the Northeast, but we will go there on occasion. And it seems to be about once a year, once every other year, we end up doing something, a long drive away from us or a flight. Not international yet, though, but I'm all in. That sounds like a fun project. And if Will Denton can teach me how to work in freaking the Caribbean, that'd be cool. Brutal, man. How busy has it been during COVID compared to last year? Freaking insane. I don't understand a lot of things, and that, still remains to be one, but we are swamped. We have never been this busy sales wise in the fall. And yeah, I've never actually had to turn people away, but we're at that point, which I'm pretty cool with. I'm sure there's a perfect storm of reasons that's happening, but they're far more complicated than I'm sure I can understand. How many projects do you take on at a time? As many as my foreman lets me. But realistically, we do about 20 a year. And, that number varies wildly depending on the size of the project. And there's definitely little things, right now we're swamped. And my guys are, I don't have any time to pull them off to do little things. But when a existing client comes to us and says, hey, can you do this thing? If it's a small enough project, that turns into something I'm just doing on my spare time just to help keep our repeat clients happy when we have a 6-month backlog. We try to just keep it to one frame in the shop at a time, fabricate it, ideally go put it right up after pre-fit, but more commonly fabricate it, let it sit for a bit, pre-fit it, wrap it, and then ship it. But depending on the project, we'll sometimes have up to 2. Like we have a reclaimed scribe rule frame coming up, and I'm not going to put 6 guys on that. I'll have 2 to 3 guys working on that one until it's done, and the other 3 guys will work on a different project. So I'll basically divide the shop down the middle, just because some projects, when you get too many hands in them, it's hard to keep them on track and efficient. Anytime, yeah, of course you do, Will. Just must be tough. Next time you go down there, call me. I'll go with you. Perfect. What else we got? The projects we have going on through the rest. So typically, I should get into this a little bit. Typically, we do mainly mill rule. So we like to work with S4S timbers and do a mill rule frame. I find that the easiest way to have 6 guys rip through a frame, keep the quality high, keep the efficiency up, and make money. But I also, we're a custom shop, so we'll do anything. And so for the rest of the year, we have a red oak frame that's rough sawn. That's going to be square rule. We have a white oak frame, S4S, that's mill rule. We have a as is reclaim frame that's scribe rule. And we're looking to fabricate, pre-fit, and install all of those this year if possible. We'll see how that goes. We'll do primarily fir, actually, counter to what Eric is asking. We'll use any species: cypress, oak, cedar, pine, fir, hemlock. But a lot of, Douglas fir is just fantastic to work with and to design with, especially. So we do a lot with fir. I don't know how the fires out west are going to affect that. And quick note for Raul, S4S is surfaced 4 sides. So when a mill will cut the timber, they'll rough saw it. With Douglas fir, it's typically, say sawn to 8 inches by 8 inches, then ran through a 4-sided planer to make sure it's true and square dimension, because the rough sawn isn't always dead on. They'll S4S it or surface it to 4 sides, so it's smooth planed, nominal dimensions, 7.5 to 7.5, coming out of an 8x8. Hopefully that clarifies. So yeah, a lot of fir. A lot of times with the oak, it's just such a dynamic species that when it comes to residential projects, the clients want something a bit more stable like fir or pine. But we do love oak for a good barn or unconditioned space where it's going to dry a bit slower and stay a bit more controlled. Because I hate seeing joints twisting out of their housings when the oak dries in a heated building. Just drives me insane. So I would say my favorite material is fir, just because it allows me to do some wonky designs. But I love the local nature of things like eastern white pine and red oak and hemlock. And I actually haven't used an eastern white cedar, and I want to try to do that soon because that sounds cool and it's local and I don't know anything about it, so may as well learn. And so that's kind of the fun part about being custom, is I get to have clients bring these fun things to us and say, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll make something work, and I'm able to somehow convince them of that. Thank you, Kieran. Yes. I don't have a good sense of how many board feet we cut per year. That seems like it'd be a fun little tidbit of knowledge to have, but I don't have it. I try to, at the end of every job, enter in all the data from the job into a spreadsheet to track it. And that basically pumps out a really great chunk of information on how well we performed on each job. You know, did we cut it as fast as we said we would? Did we raise it as fast as we said we would? So on and so on. Once I lost my in-house bookkeeper, doing that became far fewer and in between, unfortunately, just because my workload increased. But I hope to do that a bit more, because I think for me, having really quantitative information on our successes and failures is really helpful for me to learn, and allows me to really pinpoint where we can improve. So I can't recommend Excel enough to everybody. It's just fantastic. What's up, Mac?
I was just going to ask you what your average day was like. What are you doing?
I love my job because I don't have average days. I love the fact that it's constantly changing and shifting. Since I do such a variety of things here, you know, today I woke up, went to the sawmill because we were out of material before the full load's coming tomorrow. So I went to the sawmill and loaded up a trailer to keep the guys going today. Drove back. Luckily, I ran payroll yesterday, so I didn't have to do that today because it's due today by 5. So I picked up material, then got back in time to coordinate with the crew a little bit, have a Zoom sales meeting to sign up a new design contract, have a little bit of time to go grab a bite to eat in the center of town, get back. At that point, it's a lot of emails and catching up with folks, coordinating the current projects as my role, kind of project manager on all of our work, coordinating with the designer to make sure he has everything he needs. We have all the materials we need for all of our upcoming jobs. Continue to try to get bids out there, sign up new work. Then around 5 o'clock, I went out and swept the entire shop because I was woefully embarrassed showing you guys an unswept shop. If only the guys did that, wouldn't that be cool? And then I had a phone call with a bunch of cool cats. So that was my day today, and my day tomorrow will be different, and I love that. Are we cutting and raising with green wood? If so, is it different in shop on site than we use kiln dried? I would say most of our frames are green. But we will use kiln dried, depends on the client's budget and interest and desires. It depends on the material. Honestly, we don't see Douglas fir, you know, when it's free of heart center, we don't see that moving very much after we put it up. We have a frame in Hardwick that we did about 5 to 8 years ago. I should remember that. Out of Douglas fir, and it still surprises me how tight the joints are after a period of time where I'd say it's pretty well dried. Pine seems to be similar. The red oak and white oak, boy, does that move. And we've actually done a little bit of work with kiln dried white oak, which is a interesting topic amongst sawyers and timber framers alike. And that is just dry and hard. Fabricating green wood is just so much nicer. Having a little bit of moisture in there to add a little bit of lubrication to your tools is a dream. Because when it's, you know, real kiln dried or reclaimed, that is just dusty, feathery material that some of the guys will actually spray with a bottle of water on the joints just to get it to cut a little bit cleaner. So I don't know. My favorite thing to cut is just real green red oak, because that stuff slices. It's a bear on the shoulder, but it is clean. Cutting dry cedar is just a miserable experience. I mean, the grain is just gonna snap before it actually wants to slice nicely, or I suck at timber framing, and a little bit of both. Maybe I should just sharpen my chisel. Is your sawmill a local operation using local timber, or is it a larger multiple site operation? I find one of the reasons that we are able to make a little bit of money in our organization is because we don't saw our own material. I'm sure we would just mess that up real quick. We defer to the professionals to provide all of our material. Now, I do have a wood miser coming start of November that we'll use as an auxiliary unit to resaw material we already have or aid us in doing live edge work, but a good 98% of our material, 99% of our material comes to us from a sawmill.
Are you going to set that wood miser up, Christian? Didn't look like it had a lot of room for that.
Well, we didn't go outside because it's dark out.
Oh, okay.
No, we got a concrete pad that we're going to put it on. That, you know, really, I think the biggest thing is when we have to do long rips on something, instead of pushing a 16-inch circular saw through a big timber to get it to what we want, we're going to put it on the sawmill and save our tool and our shoulder. But also, you know, when I have extra material in the yard from jobs that's now shrunk a half inch in all directions and we can't use, we can then rip that down and use it on a smaller timber and actually keep that material a bit more functional. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that affects our operation. My foreman is a terrific foreman, terrific guy, and a curmudgeon to boot. And he likes his way, and I like pushing new ways on him. And he's convinced that he can rip a timber faster with his circular saw method than with the sawmill. So once that sawmill gets here, we're having a damn competition. I want to see who wins. I'm really hoping one of my guys beats him, but I'm afraid he's going to win. And that's going to be really awkward. So we'll see. What else we got? Okay, I answered the sawmill question. What am I missing, Mac?
Oh, well, I was going to say, why don't you do the inverse without necessarily referring back to the reverse? Which, like, what were your biggest successes?
Oh my goodness!
I mean, there must have been a few.
Getting my foreman back, that was pretty awesome. You know, being able to kind of eat my shirt and say, "Yep, my bad. We need you." You know, I think. Yeah, money goes a long way with people. They like to get paid a good rate, and that's one thing. But I think more than that, they want to feel good about their job. They want to know that they're appreciated. They want to know that they're not just, you know, some dude, but they actually make a difference there. And that's been one of my biggest successes, I think, is really trying to empower my guys and make them know that they are a really important element to Hardwick Post Beam. This isn't just, you know, the Christian show. This is the, you know, we're all in it, getting to a common goal. Let's work together to make this happen show. And I think that's one of my biggest, I think figuring that out is one of my biggest successes. Adding health insurance as an option here is another one. And I'm looking to add a retirement plan as another biggest success in the future. Because honestly, you know, if we need to set ourselves up to be a company that someone can come into the age of 16 and retire from and feel good about that, feel like they were taken care of, feel like they can retire at a good age, have a good career. I want to set this company up in a way that we have places to go. Timber, you know, you can go from apprentice to, you know, full-blown timber frame to foreman to project manager. Just, you know, I want to have room to grow here so that when we find the right people, we don't lose them. Because the right people are hard to come by. That is the most important thing in this industry, is getting good people. And if you have that, game on, you're golden. Okay.
Well,
yeah, I agree, Will. It can't just be one stick. 'Cause I think the circular saw will outperform the sawmill with one. But if there's going to be there's going to be a scale where it's just so much better than the mill. So maybe we'll have to do a few tests to see where that triggers out. Have you assembled any frames with CNC? You find any disadvantages or advantages over the hand cut frames? That is a really tricky question. I think that has a lot of bias involved in it. And I'll try to approach without bias. I think a CNC is just a tool, and it's only as good as the operator and quality of the tool. We have done a few frames with CNC. They were really nice because they showed up already cut. And depending on where you get the product, some work may be involved or not. We haven't done enough, though, for me to have a really good sense of it. My knowledge of CNC is also that, you know, you need to keep that thing humming. And my uneducated opinion on it is it takes the same amount of people to do a hand cut frame or a CNC cut frame. Just if it's hand cut, there's more people in the shop. If there's CNC, there's more in the office. So I think we need to detail our timbers out less than you would with a CNC. But the CNC is definitely going to cut certain things faster. There's really pros and cons to both. But I do know that if I got a CNC, my crew would quit. And I like my guys, so we can't get a CNC for that reason. If S4S is not an option due to client finances or preferences, what layout method would you recommend and what tips, tricks would you offer for that situation? We have mill rule, square rule, and scribe rule. Mill rule goes to S4S. It assumes the dimensions in the plan and the dimensions of the timber are the same. Square rule assumes they're not and takes that into account. Scribe rule means that nothing means anything and make it work. And based on the material, that will dictate which style you use. I'm not going to scribe rule an S4S frame because that is just a waste of time, in my opinion. And I'm not going to mill rule, you know, a reclaim frame where nothing's as it seems. You know, once again, that's just a tool. You need to apply the right tool to the right situation to get the result you're looking for. Any traditional tools aside from chisels and slicks in addition to power tools? Yeah, chisel, slicks, some hand planes just to tune up stuff a little bit. It depends how, you know, use a frame and square. That's pretty traditional. We still use we don't use a laser for measuring post feet on site. We still use a transit. And since I don't use it, I don't have a lot of say in that one. You know, my foreman, some of the guys like using the transit, so they're just going to keep using the transit. And it works, so I can't argue. I want to fix the broken things. I don't want to push too hard and fix things that aren't broken. So we keep going with that. But yeah, I've been thinking about tooling a lot because my guys work pretty hard and I'm not looking to push them much harder than what they do already. So if we're going to make up time, it probably would be in maybe different tooling techniques and what options are out there. And, you know, we like to call ourselves a hand cut shop. And, you know, when does that not become the case? Probably just once you get a CNC. So yeah, really, I try to be aware of the new tools out there and new technologies that can help save us a little bit of time while still staying true to what we're looking to do. Yes, the Moffell race in the same light. I'm actually really interested in making a little video series that tackles different methods with different tools, you know, what we do versus what we could do with a different method to see how they change. You know, a lot of manufacturers tout a lot of claims about their tool and how it's going to change your life and cook you dinner and do everything. And that's all well and great, but they're trying to sell the tool, so it's hard to trust them. And so I'd love to be able to, you know, try a tool, put it against the way we do it, really take some measurements, plug it against our burden labor rates, and really see how that tool will actually function in our setup. Because, you know, it may be a great tool, but it may not work for our system. Moffell is a great mortiser, no doubt about that. But maybe it means that all of our mortises have to be 2 inches now for it to be really efficient. So, you know, it depends on the style a little bit. And yes, Mr. J. Dodson, I am definitely thinking about actually putting it on YouTube. And honestly, they'd be videos for professionals. They're not going to like help with clients at all, but it's, I really want to have side by side timed, races to see how the Makita goes against the Muffel, the Arunda system versus hand cutting dovetails, a slew of things just to get some numbers to it. And then I can make informed decisions. I guess enough as it is. I'd like to make some informed decisions if I can. Do you insulate the structure or do more of the building project beyond the frame? We will help coordinate using SIPs from Ford Panel. We love those folks up there. And sometimes we fold them into our contract and then still have Ford put them up. And then sometimes we just have them contracted with Ford because it's less of a headache. But I love putting SIPs up there, but we also love not doing the actual SIP work. If I can continue to do just the frame and walk away and be successful at that, boy, that would be nice. You get out when the client has money and they still love you. But I may get in my own way and eventually start taking on more. But unlike someone who started construction when they were 16 and has been working in the industry their whole life and then started a timber frame company and knows about conventional, knows about full building processes. And then they say, hey, well, I've done a lot of this. I'm just going to start doing the whole home. I had that kind of experience in that realm. So it's, I would need to have the right project manager here if I was going to dive into getting into more turnkey houses. And I'd have to commit to losing some money for a while, I think. But we'll see. We'll see what the future holds for me. Who knows? I had no idea I'd be doing this 8 years ago. So really, it's all just a gamble. Polyiso or EPS? Typically EPS. Sometimes we'll go with a urethane panel. I think I've seen Ford pump that on one of our frames just once. More often than not, it's the EPS. It's cost effective. SIPs are pretty expensive as they are. And the EPS helps keep that under control a little bit. I keep trying to team up with a builder to price out an equivalent, a conventional system to wrap the house, air sealing, drywall, boards on the roof, insulation, structure, sheathing, get that priced out and compare it to SIPs and have a really good apples to apples number. I haven't convinced a builder to go down that rabbit hole with me yet. I think I got one on the hook that I'm trying to really get in on it. I think I get that question all the time, and I don't really have a great answer, and especially not right now with prices jumping through the roof on 2x material. But I think it would just be really valuable to our clients to help us steer them towards good solutions towards their project. But that's down the road. One of the many ideas that hasn't come to fruition yet. I mean, I also plan to organize the whole shop before this phone call, and that didn't happen. So I got to be realistic with what I'm gonna actually do.
Looks more real the way you have it, Christian. Doesn't look bad at all. Looks great.
It works. It does a trick for us. I don't know anyone who doesn't want more space. So of course we do, and my foreman has just been having a ball in the backhoe, just ripping down trees and giving us more yard space. So we're hoping to really expand our storage areas and maybe even make some little timber coverings. I know a timber frame at a timber frame shop would be crazy, but looking to get some spaces that we can store some covered material just to help keep it in check.
I think a decent shop might be 800 feet long, Christian. That's how long I think you need.
We're on the same page, Mac. You and me, I get it. Hybrid frame idea. I don't think there is a cookie cutter solution to every project. We don't have a book of plans because everything we do is a little bit different. We've taken existing designs that a client loved, but it still changed because their site was different. Their needs were different. Their location was different. So every project will kind of come together in a way that makes sense and takes into account all those aspects as well as their budget. So I think a hybrid frame works in situations. I would rather see them be responsible with their money and not try to shove timber unnecessarily where it shouldn't be, and focus on putting it where it really shines in order to get some timber, and then doing a conventional bump out if they need it. I'd rather have the job with some timber than no job. And if you try to shove something where it doesn't belong, you'll probably lose that job. So it's not about, as much as it's about building a good timber frame on our design side, it's not about building just a good timber frame, but it's about building a good structure. And that doesn't always mean timber everywhere as much as we want it to. Did I answer that question? I think so. I'm sure you are, Will. Yeah. You guys could actually probably use that better than most. Eric, so our interior finish is just a linseed thinner mix. It's not turpentine, but just mineral spirits or paint thinner. 50-50 mix. Applies easy to reapply. We'll oil all of our frames before they leave the shop. Then we'll touch them up in the field. They're bound to get marks, and we find that blends in nicely. And then when their grandkid draws on the frame with a crayon 2 years from now, they can sand it, apply a little bit more, and it'll blend over a little bit of time. So we like that. It's pretty easy to put on. For our exterior applications, we'll do the Heritage exterior oil. One, because it's a great product, two, because it smells really good. But we will do a variety of other finishes. We probably shouldn't because it's a pain in the ass. But clients will come and they'll want more of a gray finish or that more brown finish. But I try to stick with oils. We don't do film finishes. We don't do like a urethane. It has to be rub on, wipe on, or they need to find someone else to do it. That's the Heritage exterior oils finishes. I think it's Heritage Natural Finishes. I think the actual company name. Autumn runs it, and she's just a champion among mere mortals. And her exterior finish is great. It's a linseed mix. It's all very natural. It smells like freaking oranges, man. It's just wonderful. And it has some mildewcide in there. It has some UV inhibitors, so it helps to just keep that timber looking pretty slick for a while. So that's just a great product to use and a great person to buy it from, which is also what it's about. Buying, our clients are nice enough to buy from awesome companies, so it's nice when we can do the same and work with awesome folks. We don't own a crane. We rent out all of our trucking and our crane usage. I have a trucker that's been with us for a while and is a champion. He has his 18-wheeler flat deck. He has that same head unit, can get a straight deck that attaches right to it. That's about 18 feet. Then he also has, a truck and a gooseneck. So he has a lot of capabilities. And he's not necessarily a trucker. He has a farm supply store, so he uses that for his own needs. But he is really willing to help us out and do all of our trucking. And he also has a forklift that he can attach to the back. So it's nice when we can just send him to the site, unload the timbers. We don't have to be there, and he'll take care of it. So that makes our life pretty easy. And then we have a crane operator we use who's local to us that I'll pay him to drive as far as he's willing to drive. I'd rather use him than find someone local just because he is fantastic. By the time we get to the pocket to set the dovetail joist, he may already have one side in. And he knows the order in which we work. He knows, we don't really use signals anymore. We just kind of point and grunt like cavemen. And he knows what that means, and he gets it there, and he's just great. So, when we find those people, just like when I find those employees, I really just try to dig in and get them to live here forever. It's the same with our subs. Once we find those subs at work, it's just a dream come true. Thank you, Will, for posting that. You are on top of things. How are we doing on time, Mac?
We're right there at 8:04. I was considering interrupting the question and answer session just because we've lost about 16% of our people so far. And I wanted to mention 2 weeks from now, we're going to travel out to British Columbia and visit with Fraserwood Industries, doing a Talkin shop out there. So that's kind of bracketing the extent. I would say that I have talked to Peter about this property that he has out back, and that is about 800 feet long. And it did seem, there's a building on it in this brownfield site, and it needs a lot of work, but it seemed like it might be long enough for a shop. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep. Any final questions for Christian? Christian also has led the effort in terms of peer-to-peer. So if you're a company member, consider peer-to-peer. It occurs to me, Christian, that this is kind of like peer-to-peer. So it's one timber framer talking to other timber framers and trying to provide them some insight. So in some ways, you're doing it right here. So.
And the peer-to-peer is nice though, because it's smaller groups. So that added intimacy gives a little bit more comfort. So companies are a bit more open to sharing and helping each other through things where some folks may not be willing to say where they totally screwed the pooch in front of 30 people. So it's just a nice, welcoming, warm environment to chat and learn and figure things out.
Yeah, and it's people that you're there every month with. It's the same people, yeah. So you learn to trust them. And
correct.
And that's really important if you're going to be sharing maybe some negative examples. The group that Christian works with, they're filling my email box all the time. They're just like, they seem to be talking almost on a daily basis, and
we love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I forget what you call that where somebody singing, they sing one thing and then the other people answer them. That's what it feels like. It's like back and forth between the members of Christian's group, and there's really good information, I think, being shared. Very useful information being shared, helping all of them to become better timber framers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to run a 40-year-old company with 6 years of experience. The math doesn't add up there. And so the only way I'm going to make that work is by finding the people with the experience and listening when they talk. And that's just made a world of difference. Holy crow. I mean, it's amazing having this guild.
Yeah, well, best I can tell, Christian, you're doing a wonderful job. This is a wonderful session. Thanks for being so open and sharing with us all tonight.
Happy to.
Yeah, it was surprising to me after we kind of got done with the shop tour what was going to happen, and what's happened is a great exchange of information. So nice.
My pleasure. Thanks for the questions, folks.
Thank you, Christian. I want to thank you. That's been a mighty fascinating thing. I've got a little saying that life's too short to work for an SOB, and I don't want to be one. So seems like you heard the lesson.
Yeah. I learn the best lessons when they're really hard lessons. That's when they sink in. Too easy, I forget it too soon.
Well done, both audience and presenter.
Great job, Christian.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Y'all have a good evening.